Well, Disney's Bambi is latest victim of the woke war on culture. A screenwriter hired to remake the classic says the movie's most famous scene, in which Bambi's mother sadly dies, could be scrapped as it's triggering for modern-day parents and their children. She elaborated in this interview with Collider.
What's interesting about Bambi to me is it absolutely is a classic. It's such a gorgeous film. It's a little bit different tempo than I think modern audiences are used to. And I also think there's a treatment of the, not to spoil the plot, but there's a treatment of the mom dying that I think some parents these days are more sensitive about than they were in the past. And I think that's one of the reasons that they haven't shown it to their children. But our take on it was, did give a little bit more of a scope to it. And I just think that to be able to bring it to life for kids these days in a way that maybe they relate to a little bit more would be of service to the original.
How's she going to feel when I order venison for my dinner tonight? Children are facing an epidemic of anxiety, apparently. It's maybe because we feel the need to protect them so ridiculously much all the time. Now from Bambi. To discuss this, I'm joined by Outkick host Tomi Lahren, the author of The Case for Cancel Culture, Ernest Owens. Well, welcome to both of you from across the pond. All right, Ernest, you've defended the indefensible a few times on this programme, but come on, for goodness sake, we're going to try and airbrush the reality of Bambi's mum getting slotted? What's the matter with you?
Well, there's nothing wrong with me. I think that the reality is that as society evolves, we should also think about, the impact. We are in a different type of world now. There's a lot of violence on TV. There's a lot of grotesqueness. And I think that this classic film should be seen with a different perspective for kids. I think that the death scene isn't necessarily the thing that they should be fixated on. I think there's something to be said about how children deal with death and death scenes compared to adults like you and I. And I think that this is a very smart move. I think it's a move that is considerate. I think that it shows progress. And I think, to be honest, I think some parents would rather have that conversation with their children in the privacy of their home rather than having these films, kind of traumatizing
Ernest,
them.
What's next? Are you going to remake Jaws and make sure the shark doesn't eat anyone in case someone's triggered and can't go swimming? It's nuts. Tomi, this is just nuts, isn't it?
It's nuts, and I would also like to say I wish they would stop remaking Disney classics. We talked about this, I think, a couple months back, this remake, the Snow White. They have to make it for woke audiences. Does Disney really not have any other ideas? Can they not come up with anything new that they have to remake all the classics? So that's my first point on it. And second of all, I believe in protecting children. I just find it quite interesting that the same woke liberals that are worried about this hunting scene in Bambi have no problem exposing children to gay porn and LGBTQ themes, telling them that they are born in the wrong body, encouraging them to be non-binary. I mean, really, I'm waiting for this Bambi remake to have Bambi as a trans deer, or maybe the mother died from climate change. So again, the things that the left and the liberals are triggered by always astounds me. I think that there are far worse things you can expose children to, that the left is exposing children to, than a hunting scene that's actually a reality of life, especially here in the United States with a lot of hunters, love it or hate it. That is a fact of where we are in this country, and I think in many places around the world.
Do you know what, Ernest? I think you've been persuaded by that argument. I can see you nodding away furiously.
I think this is ridiculously homophobic and transphobic. I think, for starters, I'm gay, and me being here talking isn't exposing children to anything. But if I was to pull out a gun as a hunter and shoot a deer for kids to see, I think that's going to cause more harm to a child than just me basically existing and living my life. I think it's ridiculous to make that conflation between, gay porn to a deer being killed, when in reality, no one is actually promoting gay porn. No one from the left is encouraging that for children. And to conflate those things in that way is intellectually dishonest and immature and problematic.
Ernest, we literally had Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs redone recently, and they airbrushed all the dwarves out of the movie, right? Because apparently they want to be inclusive. The people they didn't include were the actual dwarves, who then now are out of work. This is where this woke
version. You know what you could do? You could, rather than whining about new things, you can just go and stay stuck in 1939 and watch the Disney animated film on Disney+.
I would love to.
You could do that.
I would love to, Ernest.
And other people can watch, and other people
I would
can
love
watch
to, and then I can watch my Disney films.
That's what we have.
But Ernest, then I can watch my Disney films without people like you ruining them. right? And trying to pretend that
Piers,
some kid can't watch Bambi's mum being killed.
Piers, I hear that. Piers, I miss the old Piers Morgan. I used to interview Beyonce and hang out with the liberals in Hollywood and be nice.
Yes.
But now I have this new Piers one that's unleashed. And guess what? There's value in both for some people.
No,
Look,
I'm one of the.
We can have two things at the same time.
Ernest, I'm one of these ostracised liberals where I used to think I was liberal, and then the woke left came along, and I realised actually by their yardstick I'm right of Attila the Hun, because I think everything they do wrecks society. I really do. And when you go back and remake a Disney classic, and you presume that kids can't deal with the death of a deer, I think you've all gone mad.
But Piers, Piers, you're proving my point. Things evolve, right? And so there's a new version of you that you think has evolved. And this creator who's creating the Bambi film thinks this can evolve. And there's going to be people that say, I miss the old Piers
Ernest,
Morgan.
you're missing the point.
I want the old show, the CNA days. No, I think that's the point. We can let two things exist.
Just to be clear, I haven't evolved at all. I'm exactly the same as I always was. It's just the people I used to agree with have broadly gone mad. Tommy, the problem with this is it's a real slippery slope, I think. Once you start going after every classic, it's a bit like every historical figure. They're all flawed. There's no American president in history who won't be cancelled by this yardstick. There's no founding father that won't be cancelled. There is no film that won't be cancelled. There's no. Hang on, Ernest.
They're dead.
Hang on, Ernest.
This is a fictional film.
It doesn't.
This is a fictional film. They're
Bambi's
dead.
mother's dead. Ernest, wake up. Tommy.
Yes.
Tommy. This is for Tommy.
They're dead.
This is for Tommy. I know they're dead. So's Bambi's mum. And she should stay dead. Every time you watch a movie. Tommy.
I also
Tommy.
I think that there are, more problematic things to have to explain to children besides the death of animals. I think that is the circle of life. I think we learned that in The Lion King. We learned that from a lot of Disney classics. But, in the last segment, you were talking about the looting and the rioting and the shoplifting. Yeah. Kids are exposed to that every single day, certainly in the United States. And I don't hear liberals worried about them being exposed to that. They call that justice, right?
Yes.
But they're worried about a scene in which Bambi's mom dies. I mean, the priorities, again, to me, are so astounding.
Yeah, I completely agree. Ernest, final word.
The reach is, to me, outstanding. The reach. You're conflating looters to people who don't want a Bambi scene. Like, this is a reach. You should be stressed.
Let's leave it on a reach. Ernest, always good to catch up with you. Tommy, great to see you too. Thank you both very much indeed. All right, you were sort of convulsing, the three of you. About this debate. But Ava, at the heart of this debate lies my basic belief that we're covering our kids in so much cotton wool. They are woefully ill-prepared for the real world. And I'll explain why. When we brought in participation prizes for Sports Day, right, all that means is kids do not learn what losing involves, what not winning involves. You don't get participation prizes in the real world. You win, you lose a job, you get a job, whatever. There's no reality to this. Now all the films are being sanitized because apparently kids can't deal with these. I'm fine. I watched all these films. It didn't turn me into some corrupted mass murderer or make me flake out. It was a film that had that sad moment, and your heart goes like that when you watch it. What's wrong with allowing kids to watch the reality?
Well, I don't agree with your first bit because we actually do have participation prizes in life, and that is just not being best, not being number one.
What is that? Taxes?
At not all times are you number one.
I can tell you,
Sometimes
in this game you don't, in the media you don't. No one gives you a prize for coming 8th.
Well,
or last.
No, you don't. Maybe I would like one.
No. The British Press Awards, for example, no newspaper gets an award for coming last.
But can I say on your second point there, we actually already did soften these fairy tales. These all originate from Grimm's fairy tales.
I like the Grimm version.
But hang on, but you look at The Little Mermaid, and that was Hans Christian Andersen, and it was a really gruesome tale. We already did soften them down.
I like gruesome tales.
Yeah, but we already did soften them down. So now when we're talking
Grace, my daughter's nearly 12. She writes really quite full-on gruesome stuff, right? And it's fascinating. Got a very creative mind, very febrile mind, very all over the place. But she writes really riveting things. But it's often based on fantastical stuff, right? This is what we all grew up with. Why are we trying to pretend the real world isn't full of this thing?
Someone at Disney is a marketing genius because they are in the news every week, every month. We've remade this show, and the character is a different race. or we're cutting this scene and it's going to really annoy Piers Morgan and it's going to be all over his show for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And even though he hates it, Piers Morgan is going to go to the cinema and he's going to watch that film, and everyone who watches his show is going to watch that show, is going to know that Bambi's coming out again. Look, and it's going to make us tons and tons of money.
If I can't watch Bambi's mother being killed, I'm not going to watch it. Esther?
Well, horror story. Look, I wasn't a fan of like Snow Beige and the 7 genderless widgets or whatever it turned out to be. but I do think the overarching point is make new stories, for the love of God. Stop remaking them and just making them, you know, yellow and green and, you know, having some one-legged Chinese trans person or whatever. Just make new stories.
And it's interesting
That's
to me
all I want.
that Ernest was convinced that I have evolved to a new place on this stuff, right? I haven't. I'm exactly the same person I've always been. But the sort of the world that I thought the liberal world was about has changed so dramatically. This woke stuff is completely mad most of the time.
I don't agree. I don't think you would have read your children the Grimm's fairy tales.
Yes, of course I would.
I'd gone for the nice softened version.
Of course I would.
You would have gone for the nice, because you'd like the soft version.
And
yourself.
my kids, if we play sport, we play to win, right? I've never given them an inch. Now the older ones beat me. Okay, good. But they've learned the joy of beating their dad, because I didn't let them ever win when they were kids. I'd rather beat them 10-0 and let them win or score a goal.
I mean, part of the problem with what we were discussing before, this whole knife crime epidemic, is actually we do have this society that consistently tells people they're either winners or losers based on how much money they earn, based on whether or not they have a good car. And there are the same people who end up consistently on top as winners, the same people who end up consistently on top as losers, and the people who feel like they are losers because there are no paths for them to change their lives or to change anything about themselves end up basically taking their revenge either on themselves or on the rest of society. That is what you have when you have a society that is structured basically by telling people you're worth something and you're not worth anything.
So in your world, everyone's a winner. Even if they're lazy, work shy, don't put the shift in, they're still winners in your
my world is a world in which people are different and cannot be compared by weird little league tables that tell you if you have more money, then you're a better person.
I think money's got nothing to do with it.
But it does. You know, we live in an incredibly materialistic society.
For example, there are brilliant nurses where money is not...
And they get paid nothing because we don't value them, because we tell them that what they're doing isn't worth it.
Money is not a comparative thing in a hospital. It's not. It's
about
how good you are as a nurse.
Why do you think people like Andrew Tate are up there being like, oh, I have loads of guns and loads of Range Rovers and loads of women, that makes me a good man?
Andrew Tate has become hugely popular with young men because he is
out there. You have status anxiety.
He is out there for better or worse, and I think there are equal doses of both of him. For better or worse, he is a voice defending young men when actually every other voice out there at the moment attacks.
Andrew Tate is a voice speaking to men with status anxiety, telling them society tells you you're a loser because you can't get a job and you don't have any money. Buy a load of guns, abuse women, get a Range Rover, and then you'll be worth something. And that's so dumb.
All right.
Like, that's not how you create a good man.
Some of us just need the participation medal. That's just what we need.
Some of us just need
it, you know?
You're not going to get one,
either. Inequality in society. I think there'll always be winners and losers, and I think it's the way we handle it. To say that actually we need a society that doesn't have winners or losers is quite...
It's not that we need a society that don't have winners and losers.
All right. It's never going to be the case.
Unfortunately, I now win because I get to stay on the show. You three lose because you're being removed from the show.
And yet you'll invite us back anyway.
You know what? Against my better judgment, yes, I will. Lovely to see you all.